I'm Annette. The courtroom was filled with an air of tension as the judge read one line from my attorney's brief. His gaze then shifted to my mother, and he calmly called for the bailiff. In that moment, I knew that everything was about to change. My mother, Vera, a 65-year-old former corporate executive, had always been controlling. She had a knack for making decisions for others, and I was no exception. When I was 26, she introduced me to my ex-husband, Ryan. They met at a business networking event, and by the end of the night, Vera had already planned our first date. She picked the restaurant, the outfit I should wear, and even the topic of conversation. 14 months later, when Ryan proposed, Vera took over the wedding planning. She chose the venue, the flowers, and the guest list without consulting me. 3 years into the marriage, I realized it wasn't working and filed for divorce. Vera was furious. She told everyone in her social circle that I was being irresponsible and abandoning my family. My son, Lucas, was 6 when all this chaos began. He was diagnosed with autism at 3.5 right after the divorce. Since then, I've dedicated my life to creating a world for him that meets his unique needs. His mornings were like a well-choreographed dance. At 6:50, he'd put on his noise-canceling headphones. His oatmeal was always cut into squares, and his backpack was zipped up by 7:20. The school bus came at 7:42, and if it was more than 4 minutes late, we'd drive. There were no exceptions. I kept a color-coded schedule on the refrigerator. Blue for therapy, green for school, yellow for doctor appointments, and red for IEP meetings. I had binders for each color, with tabbed sections and highlighted dates in the margins. My co-workers thought I was overly organized, but they didn't understand that this was the only way to keep Lucas's world stable. His ABA therapist, Dr. Lily Chun, was an amazing woman. She had been working with Lucas for 2 years and 3 months. During our quarterly review, she told me that Lucas had made more progress in 2 years than most children on the spectrum make in 5. She said it matter-of-factly, not as a compliment, but as a statement of truth. Lucas didn't speak much. He had 20 words at 3 and 212 at 6. But he had his own ways of communicating. He'd hum when he was happy, press his forehead against my shoulder when he was tired, and line up his toy car's bumper to bumper when something at school went wrong. I'd learned his language, and I was fluent. After the divorce, Vera's visits to see Lucas always followed a pattern. She'd arrive with a gift and set it on the counter. Then, she'd walk through my house like an inspector. She'd open the refrigerator, check the bathroom floor, and count the bottles in the medicine cabinet. I noticed that she started taking photos on her phone, not of Lucas, but of the kitchen counter, the laundry pile, and the spots on the bathroom tile I hadn't cleaned yet. She thought I didn't see, but I'd been watching her for years. 7 months before the courtroom showdown, Vera invited me to a Sunday dinner. I should have said no. Lucas sat at the table for 12 minutes before the loud television, playing a game show with constant applause and buzzers every 15 seconds. Overwhelmed him. He pressed his hands over his ears, rocked forward, and started humming a high-pitched note. I reached for his headphones, but Vera reached for the remote and turned the volume down by only 2 notches. It was like trying to stop a freight train with a tap on the brakes. Lucas's humming got louder, and he pushed his plate. The fork clattered on the floor. Vera sighed, just like she always did when Lucas did something that didn't fit her idea of normal. I picked Lucas up and carried him to the hallway. My father, Henry, a 67-year-old retired engineer, followed me. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Annette," he said. I was putting the headphones on Lucas, and his breathing was starting to slow. "You can't handle a difficult child as a single mother." He didn't say it like an opinion. It sounded like a rehearsed verdict. I looked at him, and he looked past me at Lucas. I didn't argue. I just carried my son to the car, buckled him in, and drove home in silence. That night, after Lucas was asleep, I sat in my kitchen and replayed Henry's words. They sounded so scripted. When Lucas was born, there was a medication error during delivery that caused oxygen deprivation for 47 seconds. It was long enough to change the trajectory of his brain development and led to a medical malpractice case that took 18 months to settle. The settlement was $640,000, which went into a special needs trust. I was named the sole trustee. This money paid for Lucas's ABA therapy, 3 sessions a week at $215 per session. It also covered his sensory equipment, like the weighted blanket, the compression vest, and the swing I installed in the spare bedroom. It paid for the occupational therapy that taught him to hold a spoon, button a shirt, and tie his shoes with modified laces. And it was set aside for his future, for housing and job training when I was no longer around. I managed the trust with spreadsheets, receipts, and quarterly reviews filed with the court. Vera had mentioned the trust fund 3 times in the past year, each time wrapped in false concern. How is the money being managed? Do you have a financial advisor? Shouldn't family have some oversight? What if something happens to you? That's a lot of money for one person to manage, Annette. I always answered the same way. It's managed according to the court order. It's audited annually. And it's none of your business. One Tuesday, while Lucas was at therapy until 4:30, I was using the quiet time to prep case files for my boss, MS. Helen Reed. She was a 58-year-old family law attorney with a voice that could command a courtroom. I'd been her paralegal for 8 years, and I knew family law like the back of my hand. I went to the mailbox and found the usual bills, a catalog I never ordered, and a manila envelope from the county family court. I opened it in the driveway. It was a petition for grandparent custody rights filed by Vera and Henry. The first paragraph was like something out of a bad legal drama. It claimed that Lucas needed a stable 2-parent household and that I had demonstrated an inability to manage his special needs, with supposed concerns from medical professionals and family members. I read the petition line by line. My paralegal brain was in full gear, even though my heart was racing. Before I reached the signature page, I found 4 procedural errors: the wrong statute, a 2019 case citation that had been overturned in 2021, a misspelled judge's name, and a backdated filing date. The last line of the petition read, "We are doing this for Lucas." I took the petition to Helen's office the next morning. She read it in 90 seconds. They filed under the wrong statute. They cited a case that was overturned 2 years ago, and they misspelled Judge Thompson's name. "Also, your mother's lawyer clearly doesn't practice family law," she said. I asked, "Helen, can they actually take him?" She looked at me with a steady gaze. "Not if I have anything to say about it. You've saved me 10,000 billable hours over 8 years. I owe you at least 1 case." She took the case pro bono and said, "We need their phone records by Friday." That's when I stopped being scared. I knew Helen had a plan. 2 days later, on Thursday morning, while I was making Lucas's oatmeal, there was a knock on the door. It was MS. Rose Diaz, a CPS caseworker. She was professional and polite, with short dark hair, a clipboard, and a county ID badge. She said she was there regarding a report filed with Child Protective Services about Lucas. I let her in and she walked through my house just like Vera did, but she was actually authorized. She checked the kitchen, the bathroom, and the bedrooms. She opened the refrigerator and noted its contents, and she wrote down what she saw in the medicine cabinet. She spent 10 minutes in Lucas's room, looking at the sensory swing, the weighted blanket on the bed, the color-coded schedule on the wall, and the shelf of therapy tools. She asked about the headphones, and I explained. She wrote, "Age, appropriate sensory accommodation." She observed Lucas eating breakfast and wrote, "Oatmeal squares, spoon in his right hand." Before she left, she said, "Between us, the timing of this report and the custody petition is something I've noted." I closed the door, locked it, and sat on the kitchen floor for 2 minutes. Then I stood up and called Helen. 2 attacks in 48 hours. The petition was the opening move, and the CPS report was the follow-up. My mother was building a case. Helen filed a motion to get the full CPS report. It arrived on a Monday. It was 6 pages, single-spaced. I read it at my desk during lunch. I'd read hundreds of CPS reports for Helen's cases, and I knew what real ones looked like. This one was different. It alleged unsanitary living conditions in the kitchen and bathroom, that the child had been left unattended for long periods, and described visible bruising on the child's upper arms. Every allegation was specific, which was a telltale sign. Real CPS reports are more vague, like, the home appeared cluttered, or, the child seemed withdrawn. I recognized the phrasing in the report. It was Vera's way of speaking. I set the report on Helen's desk, and she said, "Your mother wrote this," or dictated it. Discovery revealed the 4 sworn declarations attached to the petition. There's my sister, Zoe, 27 years old, who claimed to have witnessed Lucas crying while I ignored him in another room. My aunt, Clara, 60, said she saw unexplained bruising on Lucas's arms on a specific date. My cousin, Jake, 33, alleged that I consumed alcohol excessively in Lucas's presence. And Dr. Mark Harris, a retired pediatrician and a family friend, provided an evaluation stating that Lucas needed a more structured environment with multiple caregivers. I knew they were all lies. Zoe hadn't been to my house since October. Clara lived in another state and couldn't have been there on the date she claimed. Jake hadn't visited in 2 years, and Dr. Harris had retired 18 months ago. Helen filed 3 motions in one afternoon. 1 to dismiss the petition on procedural grounds, 1 to request sanctions under Rule 11 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, and 1 to subpoena the phone records of Vera, Henry, Zoe, Clara, Jake, and Dr. Harris. While Helen handled the courtroom, I did the research. I found that Clara's credit card statements showed she was in another state on the date she claimed to have seen bruises on Lucas. Zoe's Instagram posts proved she was in a different location during the time she said she visited. Dr. Harris's medical license records showed he stopped practicing before the evaluation was dated. We also found out why Zoe was involved. During discovery, a financial document surfaced. A letter from Vera to a mortgage broker, dated 6 weeks before the petition was filed, offered to co-sign a home purchase for Zoe. The letter mentioned upcoming changes in family custody arrangements that would make co-signing financially viable. My sister sold her testimony for a down payment. Dr. Lily Chun agreed to testify, without hesitation. She brought her own binder, thicker than ours, filled with session notes, progress charts, and her professional opinion based on 712 hours of direct observation. She said removing Lucas from his primary caregiver would be clinically harmful, and his progress was directly linked to the consistency and structure I'd built. The phone records arrived on a Friday. There was a group text thread involving Vera, Henry, Zoe, Clara, and Jake. It started 11 weeks before the petition was filed. Vera texted the group, "We need to file before she gets suspicious. Everyone needs to submit their statements by the 15th. It was clear they were coordinating a conspiracy to commit perjury. Helen also subpoenaed Dr. Harris's original patient files. The evaluation submitted to the court was altered. The original said Lucas was well, cared for, but the court version said he needed a more structured environment. When Helen deposed Dr. Harris, he admitted he didn't write the added paragraph and recognized the formatting as that of a home printer, which matched Vera's church volunteer records. Helen's forensic accountant found that Vera and Henry had taken a reverse mortgage on their home 3 years ago, and the balance owed was $112,000. The renewal deadline was 14 months away, and they had no other significant assets. Henry also had unpaid medical bills from a recent knee replacement. They wanted to gain custodial rights over Lucas to become co-trustees of his special needs trust and get their hands on the $640,000. Vera called me one Wednesday night. First, she cried, then apologized, and finally threatened me. She said, "Annette, sweetheart, this has gotten out of hand. I never wanted it to go this far. Can't we just sit down as a family and work this out? Drop the countersuit, and we'll withdraw the petition." I told her the CPS report was already on file. She then changed her tone and threatened to tell everyone at my firm what kind of daughter I was. I told her Helen already had her phone records, and she hung up. Henry came to my door unannounced one Sunday afternoon. He said Vera was a mess and that I was tearing the family apart. I told him I was just responding to their petition. He said Lucas needed 2 parents, and I told him I'd been doing a great job on my own for 3 years. He crossed his arms and said, "You think you're better than us?" I replied, "I think I'm done. Please leave." Helen and I spent 3 weekends preparing for the trial. We had case files spread across the conference table, sticky notes in 6 colors, and a whiteboard with a timeline. The evidence binder was 47 exhibits thick. On the day of the trial, I arrived 40 minutes early. Vera and Henry entered with their attorney, a general practice lawyer with no custody trial experience. Zoe sat in the gallery, not looking at me. Clara appeared on a video screen. The trial began and Helen cross-examined each witness. Zoe's alibi was quickly disproven by her Instagram posts and credit card statements. Clara disconnected when Helen showed her travel records. Jake admitted he might have been mistaken when faced with the home security camera logs.
Dr.
Harris's deposition showed the evaluation was altered. Helen then presented the group text thread and the financial records. She told the court the petition was never about Lucas's well-being, but about the $640,000 in the trust fund. The judge read one line from Helen's brief and said, "The petitioner's text messages, attached as Exhibit 14, constitute prima facie evidence of perjury and conspiracy to commit fraud upon this court." Vera tried to defend herself, saying they were doing it for Lucas, but the judge cut her off. He referred the matter to the district attorney's office for criminal investigation and placed Vera under arrest for felony perjury and filing a fraudulent report with Child Protective Services. The judge denied the petition for grandparent custody rights, awarded sole custody of Lucas to me, issued a permanent restraining order against Vera and Henry, and awarded attorney's fees and costs to me under Rule 11 sanctions. After the trial, Zoe came to me, crying and saying she didn't think it would go this far. I told her she knew exactly what she was doing when she signed the sworn statement. She was later charged as an accessory to perjury, and Clara received a summons to appear before the court.
Dr.
Harris surrendered his retired medical license. I changed my locks, updated my emergency contacts, removed Vera and Henry from Lucas's school pickup list, and filed the restraining order myself. I added a provision to the trust fund that if anything happened to me, trusteeship would transfer to Helen and Dr. Lily Chen. Lucas didn't know what had happened in court. He just knew his schedule, his oatmeal, and that his mother was there for him. He came out of his ABA session that Tuesday, happy and carrying his session notes. I picked him up, buckled him in the car, and put his headphones on. He leaned into my shoulder, and I knew that all the fighting was worth it. The people who were supposed to protect us tried to tear us apart, but I fought with the truth on my side, and we came out victorious.